All right. Welcome back, everyone. This is being recorded. And we're stepping into the next topic, which is a retrospective on the TC goals. And we have several active ones at the moment. There are four. There were five during this release, but the four that are currently there are Eventlet, PrivSep, FIPS, and Secure RBAC. And we completed the LTS slash sorry the Python 3.12 testing goal. That's this one, and I suppose we have one proposed goal. That's this one. So I think I mean we have several folks here that have been working on some of these goals. So I think it's a good place to try and reflect on what's left if things are still being this thing, or if the efforts have died down, what do we have to do to actually revive these, and how important are these to us, and which where we are on each of these goals. Um, I think on the eventlet one, I think the discussion here can be brief. I'm hoping because there is a eventlet discussion specifically tomorrow at 1500 UTC, I think, and their own specific room. And I'm hoping it would be well attended by other project teams and so on that are working on this through this through this goal. A reminder: this was added as a community goal last cycle, although we were not expected to make any breaking changes in the last cycle, or not even in the Flamingo cycle. But we are hoping that project teams are actively working on different solutions and so on, and deprecating the use of eventlet within their project teams to eventually remove it. Does anything need to be said about the event-led goal here?
I mean, maybe the fact that unfortunately the event-led discussion will be at the same time that other projects discussions. Unfortunately, we don't really do some kind of cross-project days for PTG. So maybe next PTG, because I think that won't be providing solutions for every single project by 6 months. For Eventlet, I would rather prefer that for next PTG, that if we need to continue to discuss in between cross projects about Eventlet, I would prefer that before every project provide their own timelines, would have a way to have like a cross project discussion about Eventlet project progress, sorry, not project, Eventlet progress. So that way, that's what we generally did, like for unified limits, as far as I remember, or other cross project efforts. We try to have like cross project discussions before their own project discussions at the PTG, but this was before the PTGs were virtual. Now they are virtual. Know that the PTG is virtual. Every single project provide their own timelines, but
So I hear
that
you,
happens
but
virtual.
I think we had even during the virtual PTGs, we did have you know sort of a convention to have cross-project discussions the first couple of days. Um, so which is, I think, why the event-led. I mean, I scheduled the event-led one, and I was thinking, the first 2 days would be where that would be most attended, because that's what we've done in the past. But it could be that we're not, it slips our minds um, across the contributor base.
I would say I mean just to be clear,
Yeah,
I'm not
we should try to
recommending
bring
that.
it.
I mean, just to be clear, I'm not recommending that any goal should be discussed in a specific cross-project discussion before the PTG. But for that specific goal, I think that goal is very important and could be impactful for many operators very soon. So that's why I would definitely recommend that for next bit. I mean, for for this week, this is too late. But for next one, that we definitely have this kind of cross-project discussion before the other projects.
Mm.
And for what it's worth, I will try to attend it. But yeah.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Sylvain. So we'll catch up on the event-led stuff tomorrow and outside of the PTG as well. Um, whereas we had a couple of other goals that that we are not sure there is a whole lot of progress from maybe a couple of cycles. And one of those is the migrate to PrivSep goal. And I was just chatting with Rodolfo on the openstack-tc channel, and he's here in the room. Rodolfo, maybe you have a better status update on this than I do. I was just going through Gerrit and seeing if anybody is still working on it. There seem to be a few project teams.
Yes, you're right. But to be honest, I didn't track what has been done during the last two cycles. So I encourage other teams to do the migration because I actually can't. I'm not confident enough to push code for other projects. But I didn't track what has been done during the last two cycles, so I can update anything new in for the last year.
Yeah, makes sense. And how do we proceed with this? I think, Jeremy, you had the thing about. Uh, oh yeah, okay. So it was a security recommendation as well, and I think it came up in the event-led context as well, and it was it's to I think the Oslo team would not like to invest their time on on the root wrap um, repo and removing event-led usages over there, replacing it with something else, and so on. They would rather focus on things that are going to be used in the long term. And so right now, if there is a heavy usage of root wrap that prevents them from that plan. Um, so I think it'll come back to relevance is what my thought is for project teams to complete this migration.
Um, is Fungi willing to
Yeah, bring
explain?
that up.
Yeah, I'm curious. Are people just replacing um, calls to root wrap with calls in PrivSep, such that they're wrapping too much Python code?
Um, in a lot of cases, what we saw was that the root wrap rules that had effectively said, that the Nova user or the Neutron user, or whatever, can run anything as root on the system. The code that has been passed through PrivSep is really just wrapping the generic ability to do system calls. I don't think that's the case in Nova, but like in a number of the projects where the root wrap conversion was done, they really just basically made it so that you could initiate any sort of calls through PrivSep, rather than wrapping specific Python routines.
You mean so like they have a copy function,
That
file
sort of
copy?
thing. That
Okay.
sort of thing.
I
Yep.
mean, that is still an improvement to me over a sudo rule that says that the Nova user can run copy with sudo, because um, you still have to have infiltrated the service process in a way that you can make a call to its privsep to do that thing. Whereas if it's a sudo rule, then you just have to be able to become that user on the system outside of that process tree, and then you can do that stuff. So I mean, it is better, but
Yep.
I agree that was not the spirit of the transition there. But yeah, I think that Nova's probably not in that bucket. Most of the things that I see are pretty Nova specific synthetic operations.
Yeah. I mean, just more generally, it would be nice if the teams who are using PrivSep would take a look at their PrivSep usage, and with an eye toward whether those PrivSep calls are tightly constrained, or so loose that they could be abused with relatively minimal effort.
Well, yeah, I think it's already above minimum effort to abuse them, even when they're generic like that. But that's fair. I think the other thing that probably Nova is not as squeaky clean here is the thing that Clark loves to beat us up about, which is I think that a lot of um, PrivSep conversions were done like it's too easy to do it because it's just Python, whatever. And if you don't realize what's happening, you can end up passing a lot of data between the two of them. And you end up, with PrivSep basically expanding its heap every time it's got to read a whole bunch of stuff from the master process to maybe do a thing. And that means that PrivSep, which should just be like running commands for you, kind of, at the high level, ends up potentially swallowing a lot of data, expanding its memory footprint over time. And I expect that is why that is happening. Um, and it's hard to like look at it and see, well, this is just a Python function call interface. But what you have to realize is that underneath, it's got to serialize everything, pass it to the other process. It's got to deserialize it and then do that thing. So anyway, that's been a net negative, I think, that Clark would argue, um, of the transition.
Makes sense. And it is a one-way transition though. Like we are not expecting to go back to root wrap or something because of these negatives.
Oh
In
yeah, I'm not saying that we should. I'm just saying um, it served its purpose very well of being very easy um, to do. And so there are multiple ways that you can execute that transition poorly. One is not making things any better by just like privsep wrapping a copy function, or passing a huge amount of state to the thing. It's kind of the opposite, right? Where you can privsep wrap copy operations, and which is probably too generic and fine grained, right? Or you can pass a whole bunch of state and then do a lot of Nova specific, for example, stuff in the privsep context, in which case you've moved a whole bunch of state into the sensitive area, which shouldn't be there, and you've inflated its memory footprint more than it needs to as a result. So
Yeah, makes sense. I'm not sure that's stopping the rest of the teams from making any progress, though. Like I remember that memory issue stalling certain things, but I think we had some more improvements in PrivSep. Um, but it
Well,
looks.
that's the yeah, that's the thing. I'm not sure that it's really PrivSet being irresponsible with memory so much as the stuff that gets wrapped.
Right.
I could be wrong, but and no, I'm not saying that that's preventing people from doing it, but you know, it's kind of a net negative impact on people's CI jobs. They might not even realize that it's happening, but you know, anytime you go into infra and propose to increase the swap on your job, you will get an automatic Clarkbot response that says it's probably your privsep that's, you know, eating all your memory.
Yeah, I like that, Nick. It is Clark B. um, all right. So, Rodolfo, is it possible to spin a goal update on this and probably just share it, with the. I mean, you had at some point the current state of the projects. That must have changed, right? This was written, a couple of years ago at least.
Uh, as I said, it's been some time since I work on this. I will need to retake all my notes and check the current status of the brief. At this point, I can't tell you how the status is. But of course, if bootstrap is going to be deprecated may, or removed because they don't want to operate or to push a new backend there. So this will be the best occasion for moving out bootstrap.
Yeah, it would be, and I would think with the status update we can actually bubble it back to project teams that are not paying attention, um, and have somebody working on them in these projects.
In any case, and this is in my to-do list, since now I will send a mail at the end of the week or at the beginning of the next one, just to retrieve some information from the team leaders and just to know how we continue during the next cycle.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you. I think Jeremy had a point about the performance impact and the memory usage. If it's not documented properly, uh, we ought to. I don't think it is, but I think there is some mailing list discussions that we could refer to. Dan, would you know if?
I'm not aware of any, no.
Thanks, Rodolfo, for taking that AI. And the next one we have is FIPS, and this is one other thing that I was not sure of what's happening. I know there were jobs in a lot of different projects testing FIPS compliance, but I'm not 100% sure everything was done because there were things that were tagged to the A cycle and the B cycle, and I think yeah, one thing I'm quite sure that was not completed was the Paramiko replacement. A FIPS compliant replacement for Paramiko should be implemented across all OpenStack projects, and the current status is no longer current on that goal. Um, Anybody here that could speak to the FIPS effort?
FIPS, this is Dave from Red Hat. FIPS, I don't know. We are working on Paramico right now, on Paramico replacement. Doing some investigation into that.
Thanks, Dave.
Mm-hmm. I can have Ade look at the uh, FIPS the FIPS goal and update that for the governance as well.
Awesome. Thank you. That'll be
Mm-hmm.
helpful.
Yeah, I'll get him on that.
So I have one question about this. In Neutron, we are running some flip jobs, and those are currently running on CentOS 9 stream. So I wanted to check like what's the recommendation in this Flamingo release, because with Flamingo we are saying that it's Python 3.10 plus, and CentOS 9 stream was with Python 3.9.
Yeah.
So I assume we will be dropping CentOS 9 stream with this Flamingo release, or what's the recommendation? Should we continue using CentOS 9 stream, or is there any other distro which can be used for FIPS testing?
We are in a bit of a pickle with CS10 stream. I think it's because of the lack of providers that support the CPU architecture that it requires. Um, and I think there was some point at some for there was an Ubuntu support as well that we could get the community version of Ubuntu that could support FIPS, enabling FIPS and so on. So that could also be a replacement, but I'm not sure if there was any update on that.
I thought we did. I
Right.
thought we did get that. I thought that last I checked, there was basically some problem where what a particular distro release considered to be the FIPS standard at the time, was always different. So like Stream 9 and Ubuntu 2204 had different definitions of what was allowed and recommended and disallowed. Um, and I don't know, maybe Noble now, would be caught up with what 9 was at the time or something. I'm not sure, but yeah, I thought that was like part of the complication. But maybe Jeremy can say, but I really thought that we had gotten that code. We got it put in there. They said they would just revoke it if anybody was caught using it, but I thought that part was solved.
Yeah, the technical logistical challenges were solved or were solvable. The um, the functional problem with it is that their process for um, adding FIPS to a release is that after the release is official, then they put it through government vetting and validation, whatever. And by the time they get it FIPS certified and then start offering it a FIPS mode for it to customers, they're already like 2 years in and putting out another LTS release. So we would basically need to test on like one prior LTS release than we normally indicate in our
Okay.
in our test requirements. Like for right now, we could do FIPS testing on Jammy, but not on Noble.
I see. So it's really the certification of the LTS that's the lagging thing.
Right.
Okay. So wait, so that's an Ubuntu thing though, because I mean Stream I'm sure is not actually certified. So Stream just lets you turn it on with what they're planning to.
Right. The difference here is that Ubuntu's FIPS mode is tied to their FIPS certified
Okay. Yeah.
commercial sub distribution. They sell customers FIPS Ubuntu effectively. It's like a license that you enable, but you know, with that you get a FIPS certified Ubuntu deployment, but as a result it has to wait for passing through FIPS certification. They don't have like a FIPS preview for the not yet certified FIPS mode for a particular LTS release.
Okay, so I might be thinking about Debian then, because I think Debian you can turn it on as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, there's basically a package you install in Debian that's sort of a dummy package that pulls in the specific settings and required packages for supporting FIPS mode, but it's not necessarily a FIPS compliant Debian installation. It's basically a FIPS enablement.
Right. So yeah, I guess I thought I was talking to Ade about this, and it's been a while now, but I was thinking that there was some reason why another community distro where you can just turn it on was not going to be as helpful as it seems. And I thought it was something to do with like what the snapshot of the FIPS policy was at the time or something like that. So maybe I'm making that up, or maybe there's a difference between like why we can't just use Debian instead of Stream for the platform. But I don't know. Obviously, he's the one that needs to be in this conversation.
Yeah, I guess there's no answer to Yatin's question yet. We'll try to get Ade to look at this perhaps and respond on the testing parts. Maybe they have an update.
I pinged Ade. I'm not sure if he's around.
Okay.
Maybe he'll join.
All right. Let's move on to the next goal in the meanwhile. And this is our back. And this has been a pretty big pain point on trying to move things across project teams, I suppose. And this is probably one of the first PTGs that we're not talking about it. And I'm not sure it's because we're done with the bulk of the projects over there. I don't see Gansham on the call, but he did compile a status recently. And I don't think I have access to it. Was there anybody here that could speak to this?
I wouldn't say I'm able to give any updates, but just I would say differently. There are some concerns started appearing in the last like couple of months. Basically, what we have right now is that in a lot of the cases, the scope is being hard-coded into directly the code and is not being part of the policy file, and it makes it pretty much impossible for the CSPs to override that. So this thing number one that I have already seen in the couple of different contexts. At my current employer, I'm also trying at the moment to actually delegate or not get rid of Oslo policy, but delegate the policy decisions to Open Policy Agent from Oslo policy. And also here, this hard-coded scope is making quite some troubles.
But the hard-coded scope is intentional, right? Like for all of...
Yeah, it's intentional, but it's actually... I'm not sure that this is a really good idea. Because there are certain cases where CSP is definitely deliberately wants to have it differently.
Right, but the problem is that there are whole code paths that cut through Nova, Glance, Cinder, Neutron, back to Nova that all require project scope. And like you're asking us to to make that not project scope requires a complete rewriting of everything down to like our decorators that record instance actions. I mean, it's like a massive change. So I think that's the pivot that we saw several years ago, to not allow you to do system scoped things on project scoped resources, because we have to rewrite all of those code paths across multiple projects. So I think those are the ones that are getting the hard coded scopes like intentionally.
Yeah, most likely, yeah. But anyway, that's what I mean, that in the context of CSPs, there is this question coming around. And the other thing is that technically from the user perspective, there is quite always, let me say it like that, there are two issues. First, users do not really, the absolute majority of users do not understand the difference between, well, from the Keystone point of view, it's more related to Keystone. Difference between domain scope token and project scope token. And this is really like every week you have a question from somebody who is not understanding the difference. And in the last release, we added exactly certain things that need to be executed directly in the domain scope token, in the domain scope. And the next issue is that imagine there is a domain with like 20 projects. So all of those project scope things that we have right now require users to have like 20 entries in their Cloud YAML. It's just insanely bad. I have a couple of ideas from the, let's say, from the user client tooling, how to deal with that, and from Keystone point of view, like something into the direction of inventing a new, I wouldn't say really a new scope, which is something like, imagine that you are going to Keystone and you are authorizing without scope, and you get back all available scopes, so that the policies, that the services later on can pick up what they need for certain operation. I wouldn't say this is also something that can be done within like a couple of minutes and that's ready. Just technically, that would give the user possibility to actually dramatically simplify their client tooling configuration. And on the other side, also there is still possibility to define policies pretty much exactly like you want, like you need them.
It is, yeah, sounds like a discussion for the secure RBAC, um, goal itself. If we have to refine it or to change some things in that, let's probably move that into the. I know that Kansham was hosting these meetings. Uh, Perhaps if there was interest, but it's worth bringing that up in that meeting or in the on the mailing list. Would that work, Artem?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Still an active goal. Not much progress in Epoxy is what I think I can note, but I'm not the authority on this. We'll see if we can backfill the status on this goal. I see some activity on the previous FIPS stuff. So Are, uh, since you're here, would you like to speak to the bits that you're adding?
Yes. Hi. How's it going?
Hi.
Um, sorry, I don't have. I'm not sure what's on the Etherpad or whatever it is you're looking at right now.
Oh,
But I can talk a little bit about. So you basically want to just talk a little bit about FIPS and where FIPS is. And
yes. We were wondering about the current status and about a couple of things actually. The testing right now. So I think Yatin had a question about replacing CS9 because Python 3.10 wasn't available. And I think the other one was about the goal progress itself.
okay, sure, yeah. So I'll be honest, I haven't worked a lot on this goal for quite a bit now. Certainly for this last cycle or so. At some point, we managed to get FIPS tests running on most of the projects that were there. But it takes some time. So the main issue with getting the tests running was that we needed to have them running on something like CentOS 9 or something similar to that, because in order to set the OS into FIPS mode, everyone runs things on Ubuntu, but Ubuntu makes FIPS mode a enterprise thing that we can use. We finally did manage to get something from Ubuntu, from Canonical, that allows us to be able to use sort of a license to put things in FIPS mode. But the problem is that the version of Ubuntu that was available to use FIPS modes on was old, and by the time we get to the point where, by the time we were at the point where we could use it, we were beyond that point within all of our testing, and so at that point, FIPS always lags, and so the problem is that as soon as they have FIPS on a particular version of Ubuntu, we are beyond that point on that point in Ubuntu. So it's a difficult proposition. The only thing that does seem to keep up is something like CentOS, for example, where we can turn things on in FIPS mode. But then, of course, that means maintaining the CentOS tests in each of the different projects, and that has proven tricky in the past, just because there have been various CentOS issues that have caused it to be somewhat unstable at times, and CentOS Stream to be unstable at times. And so I think in a lot of projects, the FIPS gates, if they are running, they're probably running either as an experimental gate, or they're running periodically or something like that. I'll be honest, I have not recently kept track of exactly where each of the projects are in terms of their implementation of their gates and where the gates are.
And Adi, what was the reason for Debian not being a slightly more stable stream alternative for this?
I had not had a chance to try it, and I can certainly, if I can find some time to do that this cycle, then that may be something that I investigated there. But I just haven't had a chance. I'm not a Debian expert. I don't know much about Debian at this point.
Okay, I thought we had ruled it out, so it sounds like we just haven't ruled it in.
Right, correct.
Okay,
we just haven't ruled it in. Yes.
Gotcha.
But that may be something we consider as well too. I know people have talked about Rocky Linux in the past as well too, as various things. But that's certainly something that could be a possibility as well too. But yes, so I guess, and I'm sorry I wasn't. I'm not prepared for this because I wasn't expected to be here. But yes, at this point, I'm not quite sure what the status is of the FIPS jobs right now in the different projects. I will take some time during this cycle to go through to the different projects and kind of see where things are. But I do think that yes, maybe using something like Debian, or using something like Rocky Linux, for example, or something like that is more stable, is something that could be an approach there. Debian certainly, just because then there won't necessarily have to be too many changes that need to be made for those projects that have not yet started their FIPS things. I mean, the problem with putting it on something like like CentOS or something like that, is that you do have to make changes, and then you have to maintain those changes and so on. There are certain things that are distinct on particular for particular projects to have them run, on a different platform, and you have to be able to maintain those as it goes through. So I can't give you a good answer right now as to where the goal is. I think we were in a generally good state at some point, but I can't necessarily say that we continue to be in this good state anymore. I would have to spend some time to spin up and try and figure out on that.
Yeah, that would
As a
be helpful.
side,
Yep.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt you. That would be helpful, and I think it doesn't have to happen here. It can happen after the PTG.
yes. Well, it won't be this. It won't be right here. Uh, as a side note to that, one of the things that we are trying to do to move us a little closer to be more sort of FIPS compliant and stuff as well too, is we have a couple of folks that are going to be looking more into the replacement of Paramiko in and its use in different places to something that is going to be more FIPS compliant. And so that's going to be at least starting a bit during the cycle as well too. So at least some folks can maybe expect Cinder, certainly on the Cinder side of things. I think we're going to start there. There's some simpler plots where we can start over there to try and do certain things. But if anyone has some folks that are interested in helping in that effort, we would definitely encourage that. And I just put them in touch with me, and I will put them in touch with the folks that are doing it on our team.
Perfect. Thank you. We're actually a little bit over the time that was allotted for this discussion, so we can curtail this. Probably come back to it if we have some time. Um, I think there was a question on the migrate CI jobs to Ubuntu Noble that seems like a straightforward answer, right? We no longer require Ubuntu Jammy in the runtime, so we could start dropping the jobs unless there is something you think that's preventing it from the top level, something in the open dev or the base jobs. Let us know. But I think at the moment there are a lot of project overrides, if any, that might be using Ubuntu Jammy because of specific reasons. But those projects must be moving on to using Ubuntu Noble or to a different supported LTS of any other distro. Um, yeah, let's move on to the next topic, which was the unmaintained branches topic, and it begins at line 140 of this Etherpad. And we're just recapping the TC resolutions around this topic that created the unmaintained branches. And we made some progress in the last cycle where we sunset the unmaintained branches for a lot of repositories for the Victoria, Wallaby, Xena, Yoga releases. And what's left, I think, is unmaintained Z across all of the repositories. And unmaintained 2023.1 is by design still unmaintained until the next Slurp release goes unmaintained. And as a reminder, I think when we do sunset Bobcat, it would just directly go to EOL. It will not be tagged unmaintained like the rest of them are. Um, I meant there's not going to be a branch for unmaintained Bobcat. I think the question here came from Frickler doing quite a lot of work trying to keep the CI healthy and so on around these unmaintained branches, and he noticed that a lot of there was not a lot of attention being spared on these unmaintained branches by design, but also not helpful because there was just general CI noise And there was also selective attention that was being paid to these branches, and we're wasting some time and resources because of it. Um, a couple of things I think was there was a missing guidance around what happens with unmaintained branches with respect to like how do you opt in, how do you get an unmaintained branch on your repository, on the repository that you maintain today. And the answer is that you have to opt in, or somebody has to opt in to maintain, or rather keep around an unmaintained branch. But we were doing this en masse. We were just transitioning all of the repositories that were there to having an unmaintained branch, which uh, goes with which resulted in what the current state is, which is that um, a lot of project teams didn't really care about this, and there wasn't anybody in the community that needed these unmaintained branches, but we just keep them around. Um, we just create them, we just kept them around, and that's what the problem we tried addressing this cycle. Um, and the other problem is, I think, how does one become an unmaintainer? Which I'm not sure we could discuss a whole lot over here. We created an unmaintained core, um, and we did specify how folks can get onto that team, and we also discussed projects could override the unmaintained core, or rather supplement it with their own unmaintained core team, and some projects have actually gone that route, which Dan Smith I know doesn't approve of, I mean, which kind of defeats the idea of that project teams shouldn't have to care about this from the get-go, so that we could free them up for active maintenance of the stable branches and the master branch itself.
What did you say I don't approve of?
That project teams create their own unmaintained core thing.
I don't think that they should, but I don't know that I would say I don't approve of it.
Okay.
I don't want them to put me on it.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm not sure. What we. I mean, we did ease the pain a whole lot during this cycle, and this was mostly informational that we did this. And the pain was we went ahead and tagged EOL on a whole lot of repositories where we didn't see a lot of traffic. And we also decided to tag EOL on all the repositories unless somebody spoke up and said, keep this repo and this branch, please. And that happened. I think. I mean, I don't know if Elod's in the room. Yeah, he is. So Elod's signed up to maintain a few of these. I'm not sure I could say few. I think about tens of these repositories and these branches. But it's not at least a global rule that we've kept the unmaintained branches across all of the OpenStack repos that have branches.
Yeah, mostly the core project that we, at least my employer, wants to keep a bit open for cooperation. And yeah, about the thing you mentioned that it's not, people are not sure how to get into the unmaintained core group. It's actually something like that, if someone wants to get into that group, then either ping us already in the group, or just drop a mail to the mailing list, and if we see that, then we can add them. Yeah, on the only requirement, I guess, is that people should follow the stable policy as well in the unmaintained core group, or while reviewing unmaintained stuff. I think that's the most important thing.
Is there an IRC channel that they can reach out to you on, or is just a mailing list?
Well, there is an IRC channel, but it's not official. Actually, Jay and me and a couple of people are there, but otherwise it's not official. And it's not logged, as far as I know. It's still not logged, but we didn't ask it to be logged.
Makes sense. And are you generally okay with what happened in the last cycle, which was that the TC, spoke about this and then said, let's just try to EOL the branches we don't care about. And that's when the discussion happened about keeping some of the repos. Is that a good pattern? Because I think the next branch up for that sort of a transition was unmaintained Z.
Yeah, actually, as far as I understood, it was how the resolution was proposed. So, well, it was not the timing and the time frames given were not followed precisely. I mean, we haven't started it, so it should. It so the opt-in should happen every beginning of the cycle, if I understood well, and it didn't started at the beginning of epoxy, but other than that, it's mostly following the resolution as far as I understood. So it's okay.
Makes sense. And I think there was another question around if someone wanted an unmaintained branch for project X, they would have to go request it. And right now the release team creates it, right? That's what the opt-in question was. Um, so we created an unmaintained 2023.1 across all of the repositories very recently.
Yeah. Currently, we are creating all the or moving all the stable branches to unmaintained because that's the easiest process, or the it works with the same tooling as we had previously mostly. But yeah, maybe that can be changed in the future. It depends how the community decides.
Yeah, I mean, part of it might be that we are confusing the process by doing that. Um, that people might expect that, okay, so there is a branch. I don't need to really step up to do much over here. The release team is going to be putting that branch up, and maybe that's something we could stop doing or avoid doing. That way, we let somebody come and tell us that that branch is even required. Because most of the time the unmaintained workflow is for long-term maintenance in case of vendor patches and so on, or even distributors or even deployers that would like to get some fixes and backport them publicly and things. So they should be paying attention when the release transitions are happening and requesting it.
Actually, correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe the current way is that for Slurp releases, always have to keep one unmaintained branch. So probably in the future there won't be such cases where we need to opt in because it's a requirement for the first time. So I'm just thinking here, maybe I'm wrong, but
I don't understand why. Did you say that for Slurp releases, sometimes we'll need an unmaintained branch?
Please continue.
I'm not sure why.
I think for the upgrade path, right? It's required that from the oldest to there's got to be an upgrade path into the stable branches.
But that is only for one cycle. But yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure I'm getting it. Like the when we release a slurp, the previous slurp is not yet unmaintained, right? You would have the previous release and the previous release, which is the last slurp, would both be stables, and then the release previous to the previous slurp would be the first one that goes unmaintained a little bit after that release happens. So I'm not sure what's the requirement for an unmaintained?
Yeah, maybe you have to. You are right. Since for example, we have now Caracal.
Right. Like now that Epoxy is released, Caracal is still supported, right?
Yeah.
So there's a path for them to move from the last slurp release to the current slurp release.
Yeah. You are right. Okay, then forget what I said.
And I think one other thing that Fritlo was concerned about was that this burst of unmaintained branches with a lot of CI errors that were there was concerning. I'm not sure. Maybe Jeremy does. How badly is this affecting the CI, and how urgent is that to address?
I mean, there's multiple impacts there. Probably the biggest though is just that there are so many errors listed because of those that it's hard to spot new errors that crop up. It's it overwhelms the overall list of errors for OpenStack projects. Aside from that, it does also cause specific problems for the branches that are impacted in those projects because they may cease running jobs altogether. For example, if their config references a config in another project that that the only branch that held that config was EOL'd and deleted or something.
Yeah.
Or make specific references to stable branches after the branch has been renamed to unmaintained or something like that.
So, I mean, but we supposedly have a procedure for that, which is like give it a weekend, nuke it if it doesn't get fixed or something, right? I mean, I think in the unmaintained discussion, we said like low tolerance for not fixing config errors, just like remove the bit of the CI config that doesn't work if it's not going to get fixed, right?
Yeah, I mean, from OpenDev sysadmin perspective, we have a somewhat more nuclear option, which is just to basically remove that project from the tenant in Zool, so that it no longer tries to read configuration from it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's generally reserved for projects that have overall broken configuration and not just errors on a specific branch. I think the challenge there is really the same that we've always had, which is if there's nobody taking care of those unmaintained branches, then that increases the chances that there's going to be config errors on them. And if there's nobody maintaining those unmaintained branches, then there's nobody who will remove the broken configuration from them.
Okay, we're at the hour. Is there anything else that you folks want to add to the minutes? I think we did some note taking here. I'll see if we can distill that into action items. Anything else about this topic?